What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. UFC Fight Night Mexico. Moreno versus Erceg is this weekend, and I'm here to break down my fight picks and some betting predictions or betting tips on what I think is going to happen based on, exactly that, what I think is going to happen. We're going to start with the early prelims, end with the main event, and hopefully we're going to sweep this card. That's the fucking goal. I think we're going to do a good job on this card, though. Feels like a good card. Also, I have a couple underdog picks I think that are going to be pretty solid. Starting off with Austin Hubbard, I don't think either one of these two fighters are, great. But Austin Hubbard is a guy who has some decent experience and has arguably beaten Alex Hernandez in his last fight. Not the best record. It is an ugly record, but he's got experience against some decent fighters like Kurt Holobaugh, Alexander Hernandez, Mikhail Figlak. It's not as great, but we've got a guy coming off the Contender Series. I don't love when guys are coming out of the Contender Series fighting against guys who have had decent experience in the UFC. I like Austin Hubbard here. I like him to get a nice, well-rounded decision, I guess. It is what it is, I never trust in these Contender Series guys, especially that, I don't know, just when it's their first couple fights, it's always nerve-wracking to just pick them, even when they're huge favorites like this on Tapology. I'll be going with Austin Hubbard for this fight. I think he's going to win by decision. Moving on to Gabriel Miranda versus Jamal Emmers. I will be picking. I'll be picking somebody. I'm going to pick Jamal Emmers. I think Jamal Emmers is the better of the two fighters here. Gabriel Miranda was finished by Morgan Charrier and Benoit Saint-Denis, two French fighters. Not saying that that's, a horrible thing to have happen, but he lost to two French fighters. It is what it is on that. I'm not a fan of it. And Jamal Emmers has had some tough fights. Like his fight with Nate Landwehr, he was winning until he didn't win. And, that was a big factor. He was doing good until he got cracked back by Nate Landwehr. He beat Dennis Bazookia, which that's a good win. Lost to Jack Jenkins is not that great, but, it is what it is. I think Emmers is the better of the two fighters. This is a guy who's been KO'd by two fighters who have recently, their stock is dropping pretty heavily versus, the fighters. Yeah. I think they're falling a little harder for Miranda, I guess. I'm going to be picking Jamal Emmers by round 1 KO. I think he's the more dangerous of the two fighters in general. But, anyways. Moving on to Rafa Garcia versus Vince Pichel. This fucking old-ass man still in the UFC. Inactive as can be. I don't know why he's still here. We're going to be going with Rafa Garcia. Vince is tough. And Rafa seems to be kind of a decisionator kind of guy. Losing to Grant Dawson. Oh, yeah, it was his ground and pound KO Grant Dawson, though. It's pretty rough. We'll be going with Rafa Garcia by decision. I think that he's just the actual better of the two fighters. I don't want to break down the outside foot battle or any bullshit like that. I'm not here for that, for this fight especially. And yeah, speaking of this is what we'll be doing. Always on this channel. For these moments. Have you lost by submission or anything? No. Okay. We won't change it then. That's what we'll be going with for that fight. Moving on to Michael Quiz. This fucking guy with skin pigmentation shit. Costa versus Christian Rodriguez. One day I will get Melky's name right, but I don't know Melquizel Costa versus Christian Rodriguez. I'm picking C-Rod, but this is a dangerous fight for C-Rod. Like, C-Rod's one of these dudes who beats everyone's next new, like, undefeated prospect that's supposed to be so great, like Bashi, but loses to guys like Julian Erosa out of nowhere, which isn't good. You know, we beat Isaac Dolgarian, Cameron Simon, Raul Rosas Jr., Austin Bashi, but lose to Julian Erosa, although his frame is a big frame and it's kind of bothersome for small, stocky guys like C-Rod to deal with. And honestly, I feel like Melky can kind of cause that same kind of problem for him. But I think that C-Rod has learned a good bit from that. He looked a lot better in his most recent performance. Like, he looked back to his normal self in that fight. Like, he looked ahead, did well when Bashi did have his good offense. I'm going to be picking Rodriguez. I think he's going to be able to get a late round finish. Honestly, I think that Melky's one of these guys who he's kill or be killed. And C-Rod typically doesn't get finishes, but I think this is one of those fights where he's going to kind of have to get a finish. Not saying that he'll be behind or anything, but Melky's going to try to push him, and it'll cause him to have to finish him. Anyways, moving on. Very dangerous fight for C-Rod, though. I do think that's going to be a fun fight to watch. Atimba Geiter versus Jose Medina. Jose Medina's just a fucking... He's one of these blockheaded, blobby, fucking Mexican dudes that just... Oh, he's not Mexican. He's from Bolivia. Never mind. I'm wrong. One of these Bolivian guys who's never been in the UFC. They just have... He has a blockhead and is a blob, too. So he just gets to absorb more damage. That being said, I do think his time of absorbing damage is going to come to an end. Like, both of his last two fights that he lost, that's all he did. Just walked forward, kind of like put his hands up sometimes, and just absorbed punishment. I'm not going to pick a dude like that to win a UFC fight. Atimba came in, I think it was a Contender Series fight, yeah. I don't love that he's a Contender Series guy, but he's a finisher. I'm going to be picking him to KO Jose Medina. I think it should be round one. I'll be picking round one. If it's not, Jose Medina can make it interesting, I guess, in round three by just kind of menacingly plodding forward slowly while this guy gasses out from beating the shit out of him for the last two rounds. But anyways, hopefully it will just be a round one finish. Maybe that's just me getting my hopes up. Moving on to the flyweight division, we've got Edgar Chairez versus some little guy who shouldn't be in the UFC. I don't know who this guy is. I've never seen him win in the UFC. I'm picking Edgar Chairez. I think he's going to submit or finish this guy. Neither one of them being great fighters. I just don't... I don't rate CJ Vergara as any guy who should be in the UFC. He shouldn't be here. We're going to be picking him to get out of the UFC by getting submitted in the first round. Moving on to another fight where we've got a massive hype train. This dude, Ronaldo Rodriguez, is very popular on Instagram, at least. He has like 2 million followers, and I think he's only had, what, two fights in the UFC. Pretty popular as a UFC fighter, especially for a flyweight. I do think that leaves him a lot of chance to get fraud checked, but I don't think it's going to be by a Contender Series guy. Yeah, I don't know. He lost to Josh Van, lost to Alessandro Costa. I mean, but he did almost lose to O'Day Osborne at the Sphere, though. So, it being what it is, I guess. I'm going to be picking Ronaldo Rodriguez. He's a more natural finisher of fights as I land on a decision. But if you look at his fights, typically wins by submission. I'll be going with submission. I think he's going to get it done in round 2. Hopefully, he doesn't get fraud checked. Hopefully, he's been working hard to get better than he was in the O'Day Osborne fight. And we're going to be picking that to happen. Moving on to the bantamweight division. We've got 2 guys that I have never heard of. Like, I guess, or decision, maybe. Like, how's this guy lose? Oh, he's lost by yeah. I don't know. You know, he's just a guy. Like, they're both just guys that I don't fucking know. Raul Rosas Jr. versus Vince Morales. I'm picking Vince Morales to upset Raul Rosas Jr. because I don't think Raul Rosas Jr. is anything outside of a decent grappler. I think he's a good grappler, but Elijah Smith looked good in his grappling against Morales, but I just think Morales is one of these guys who, he's a veteran. He's been in the UFC twice. This would be his 3rd loss in a row if he loses. He would be out of the UFC for the 2nd time. I think, especially with the performance he put on against Elijah Smith, he looked good multiple times. I do worry about him getting caught in submissions against Elijah Smith because he was caught in a couple, like, not super tight submissions, but some, like, tricky spots where he could have gotten submitted had it been a better grappler, someone like Raul Rosas Jr., but I don't see the same thing I guess other people see in this kid. He's very, very vulnerable on the feet. His last fight against Erichi Long, like, he looked not good when he was on the feet. Like, and I think that's something Vince Morales can really take advantage of and potentially even finish him. I think there's a high chance he could finish Raul Rosas Jr. here, but I'm going to be picking Vince Morales by decision. It'll probably backfire. He is an old man, but Raul Rosas Jr. is only 20 years old. Only 20. And I don't know, like, the loss to Erichi, or the win against Erichi Long, he did not look good. Tercios, it took him some time to get out of there. Tercios is a decent fighter because he did give Bernardo Sobaj a very tough fight in his last time out, outside of, like, I think it was the 1st round. But yeah, I'll be picking Vince Morales to win. I think he's going to pull out a decision. I think it'll be a pretty big upset too. Yeah, it's a pretty big upset if it happens. Moving on. We've got Kelvin Gastelum, the blockhead king himself, versus Joe Pyfer, the salt god. I think I'm going to be picking Joe Pyfer by round 2 knockout. I think he's going to come out far more measured than he normally does. He may try to grapple at first. I've heard a lot of people talking about his grappling, but I think Kelvin's heard about that because he's had some decent wrestlers in his camp, preparing him for, like, I think he's had some, like, world-class wrestlers trying to help him for grappling, but, or preventing grappling, especially with how he lost to Sean Brady. This Joe Pyfer trains with Sean Brady. Their main training partners are each other. If you don't think he's going to take notes from what Sean Brady did to Gastelum, you're crazy. But I think Joe Pyfer's going to look massive. He's going to be massive versus Kelvin. Like, they're going to look like they should be in far separate weight classes. And I think Joe Pyfer's either going to run him over immediately because of that, or just know that he can do it at any time, slowly pick him apart, and then crush him. I do worry about leg kicks for Joe Pyfer. I don't remember him being too great at guarding them, but Kelvin Gastelum's going to be very small for the weight class. Again, I just think he's going to get smashed up by Joe Pyfer. He could make it to a decision. I think he's far tough enough. He's never been finished by strikes, I think. But I'm going to be picking him to be finished by strikes for the first time. Joe Pyfer's a pretty decent fighter. Him getting fraud checked by Hermanson was different, but it is what it is. He couldn't get past a couple simple weapons. Anyways, I'll be picking Pyfer for this fight. I don't see much of a chance for Gastelum, honestly, outside of just a flash KO. He's capable of doing that, though. Anyways, let's move on to the co-main event. We've got Drew Dober versus Manuel Torres. I don't want to see Drew Dober lose a third fight in a row and potentially get cut from the UFC. But that is what I'm picking to happen, I think. I don't want to see Drew Dober lose this fight. I hope he doesn't. It's going to be fun for the time that it lasts, though, because both of these dudes just, they get after it. Once Manuel Torres gets hit clean, he turns it on and just he marauds forward. Both of these guys are marauders once they're getting clipped. Either one of them could finish the fight. I mean, you see the Tapology, you see the betting odds are near even as well. This is going to be fun. I don't think it's going to last long. It's really going to come down to who lands cleaner shots. Drew Dober is good at landing clean shots while in a war, so I do worry about that for Torres, but I think it's going to be a KO. I think he's going to land a clean shot from the outside, being as long and rangy as he is against Dober. And I think he's going to just clean chin him. But I hope it doesn't happen. I hope Drew Dober wins this fight. But, also another thing. Gotta admit it. Drew Dober, this guy's way too white. Like, I can't pick you because of that. Your main, wins are against black dudes. When they are Brazilian or white. And, I mean, he's pigmentation. I just don't see it, I hope I'm wrong. Maybe he's more of a border patrol kind of guy than he doesn't really have to deal with Brazilian guys for that. So maybe he will end up winning. I'm going to be picking Manuel Torres, though. I think he's the slicker, faster fighter, especially now after the KOs that Dober's, or the damage that Dober's taken, not the KOs. Anyways, moving on to the main event. I want to pick Erceg because I really like him. He's a nice technical fighter at 125. I do think that gives him a solid shot, but I just think the pure volume of Moreno will just eventually overwhelm Erceg. Plus they're at elevation. Moreno trains at elevation, if I'm not mistaken. They're in his backyard. It's probably going to decision. If not, Moreno maybe finishing him as well. Like, Moreno doesn't pop much or pack much of a pop, but like, I don't know. I could see it happening. I've got him by decision though. I'll be thinking, yeah. The loss to Pantoja was a good loss for him. Like, he looked good in the fight, but you know, Kai France, I didn't like that look for Erceg. Like, losing to a guy who's 5'1" when you're as technical and long for the weight classes as Erceg is. He just looked. I mean, that's a bad look. That's a horrible look. Anyways, Brandon Moreno, decent fighter, looked good against Albazi. But Albazi did fuck all in the fight, honestly. Anybody would look good against Albazi, I think, as long as they're not afraid of his grappling. Just don't worry about their grappling. Stand up. You're 125 pounds, so is he. He doesn't weigh enough to hold you down. Anyways. Sorry. Moving on. Brandon Moreno is going to win this fight by decision. We're going to be locking this in. I guess we can go back, view the pick. Oh, no, we can't. Great job, Tapology. Appreciate that. If we get back through the card, we've got Hubbard by decision, Emmers by KO, Garcia decision, Godinez by decision, or you could just say piss break. Who cares? Christian Rodriguez by KO round 3. We've got Gaither by round 1 KO, submissions by Ronaldo Rodriguez and Edgar Shirez. We've got a David Martinez KO round 1, Morales upset decision victory. Joe Pyfer by KO in round 2, Manuel Torres by round 1 KO, and then we've got Brandon Moreno wrapping the card up with a boring decision, probably. Just kidding. It'll probably be a pretty fun fight. Yeah, saved up. I guess we can move on to how we have been doing. Pick rates dropped to 62%. We went 7 for 13 on the last card, just breaking above 50%. Both of the picks that I flipped, failing in the prediction video last week, I got wrong, and then yeah, the card wasn't even fun either, so we had robbery. We had this shit happen. That was wild, yeah. Anyways, we did terrible on that. Hopefully we redeem it this week, unlike they did. Anyways, I will see you sometime, I guess. Bye.